First, that is abacus, then Napier's bones, slide rules, Pascaline, rotating wheel calculator, Jacquard's loom, differential engine, analytical engine, Mark 1, and we have reached ENAC, that is electronic numerical integrator and calculator. This ENAC was developed by John Mitchell and Presper Accord in the year 1946, and this device is called as the first electronic computer. That's why we will say that computer was developed in the year 1946 based on the Charles Babbage's analytical engine. That's why we call Charles Babbage as the father of computers. Then, concerned to this, if you observe the space required to keep this ENAC was 33 by 20 square meters space. A big hall, 33 by 20 square meters, big hall is required to keep the computers because it was open circuit computer. And this consists of 18,000 volts and it consumes 150 to 180 kilowatts of power. It means 150 to 180,000 watts of power. You can easily supply the power to a city. That's why when you start this computer, that city light becomes dim at that time. And this device was capable of performing 5,000 additions per second. 87 addition capacity per second this speed. Then it has a shareable memory. And this is the general purpose computer. Right? If you compare this ENAC versus the previous device, that is Mark 1 developed by Icon, right? This ENAC is 1,000 times faster than Mark 1. So yesterday we have stopped here. Today also revise that ENAC. Then the next device, that is EDVAC. EDVAC stands for Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. Right? This is given their expansion. Then this EDVAC, Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer, was developed to overcome the disadvantages in the ENAC. A person called John Newman proposed a new concept of a large internal memory to store data and instructions. The stored program concept was given by John Newman. Right? This was the drawback in ENAC. It has a shareable memory, but in this EDVAC we are using the internal memory to store data and instructions. And this concept was given by John Newman, and this concept is called as stored program concept. Stored program concept was given by John Newman. On the basis of this concept, Ballistic Research Laboratory of the US Army and Murray School of Personnel developed EDBS on the basis of the stored program concept. The Ballistic Research Laboratory of US Army and Murray School of Personnel developed this device, that is EDBAC. This is about EDBAC, and the next one is UNIAC, UNIVAC. UNIVAC is UNIVAC, Universal Automatic Computer. UNIVAC, UNIVAC is required. V is missing here, we have to write UNIVAC, Universal Automatic Computer. This UNIVAC is developed in the year 1951. The American Census Bureau developed this machine. It is used in both scientific and commercial applications. This UNIVAC was used for scientific as well as commercial purpose. So this completes the evolution of computer or the history of development of computers. So knowing this, we come to know that if highlight from first to last, the first recorded machine is abacus. Even till today, we are using that. Then the last important device is ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrated Calculator or Computer. This was developed in the year 1946. The computer was developed by a person called as Charles Babbage. Right? Based on his analytic engine, today we have developed our digital computers. That's why we are given an reward, an award for him, that is the Charles Babbage is known as father of computers. Sorry. Then next, this is all about history and evolution. It has taken more than 100 years time, right from Charles Babbage to ENIAC. We'll move with the next topic called as, again this is also for essay type of questions, one of the important question, that is generations of computers. Generations of computers. Computer generations. So in human beings also we have generations. If you compare your parents versus you, nodi, your parents one generation, you one generation. Adike generation gap baratta. Correcta? Your parents ku nimku ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ difference of opinion ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಆವಾಗ because the way of thinking is different. Our generation nalli ಅವ್ರು ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಅವ್ರ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಹೋದಾಗ ದೇ ಆರ್ ರೈಟ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ನೀವು ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಯು ಆರ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ರೈಟ್, ಬೋತ್ ದ ಎಂಡ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್, ಬಟ್ ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಎ ಜನರೇಷನ್. ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾ? ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಸಪೋಸ್ ನೀವು ಏನಾದ್ರು ಕಾಲೇಜ್ಗೂ ಮನೆಗೂ ದೂರ ಇದೆ, ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಗೋ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್, ಆಟೋ ಅಂದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಆಟೋ ಹಚ್ಕೊಡಿ ಒಂದು ನನಗೆ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಬರೋದೇನು, ಸಿಟಿ ಬಸ್ಸಸ್ ಇದಾವ, ಬಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಬಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಬಾ ಅಂತ. ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು 5 ಕಿಲೋಮೀಟರ್ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. ಅವಾಗ ಏನು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಕನ್ವಿನ್ಸ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಕೂಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗೋಕೆ, ಬಟ್ ನೀವು ಬಸ್ಸಸ್ ಇರೋ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇದು ಬಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಪಾಸ್ ತೆಗೆಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಹೋಗ್ರಿ ಬರ್ರಿ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್. ನೀವೇನಂತೀರಾ, ಆಟೋಕ್ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ಆಟೋಕ್ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು. ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ಕೆಲವು ಜನ ಬೈಕ್ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ನನಗೆ ಬೈಕ್ ಕೊಡಿಸಿ ಅಂತ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ನಾನು ಬೈಕ್ ತಗೊಂಡಿರೋದು ನಾನು ಜಾಬ್ ಅರ್ನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಹೀಗೆ ಬೇಕಾ ಅಂತ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಿರ್ಗಂಡು ನಾನು ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಮುಗಿದು ಜಾಬ್ ಸಿಗೋರು ನಾನು ಅಂತ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಒಪಿನಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಡ್ಯೂ ಟು ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್. ಅದೇ ತರ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ದ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಇಯರ್ 1946. ದಟ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಸೇಮ್ ಆಸ್ ಟುಡೇ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್. ಅವತ್ತಿನ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇನ್ಯಾಕ್ಟಿಗೂ ಇವತ್ತು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಡಿಜಿಟಲ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಗೂ ಎರಡು ಸೇಮ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ನೋ, ಬೋತ್ ಆರ್ ಡಿಫರೆಂಟ್. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನ ಬಳಸಿಕೊಂಡು ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡೋ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಅದು, ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಇದು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎರಡರಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಇಟ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ being an electronic device, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಇನ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಮೇನ್ಲಿ ದ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಇನ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ದಟ್ ಮೇಕ್ಸ್ ದ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ ದ ಪ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್. ಹಳಿದಕ್ಕೂ ಹೊಸದಕ್ಕೂ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಹೆಡಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ದ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ವಾಸ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ 1946. That is not same as today what we are using, because there is a change in technology, right? ಅದನ್ನ ಇವತ್ತು ಕಲಿಯೋಣ. ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಜನರೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೋಡೋಣ. ಸೊ ದ ಜನರೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ computers is based on the technology used in architectural development of computers. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಯಾವ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಯಾವ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ನಿಂತಿದೆ ಅಂತ. ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಕಾರಣ ಏನು, ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ. ಇವೆರಡು ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಆರ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಪೋರ್ಷನಲ್ ಫಾರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ಸ್. It also includes the processing techniques. Once computers are developed, then how to process our data. Again, we have different techniques and methods. Then technology and the bandaitu. In the past, we might be using punch cards for input, but presently we are using keyboard for giving input, mouse for giving inputs. Okay. Even our printer sitta irilla, we are note downing the things by using monitor, but today we have printers, plotters, speakers, right? Output devices. Ellarnu change ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ technology is changing. Then techniques are changing. Then the devices are changing due to technology. All these are responsible for making changes into the computer generations. It also includes the processing techniques, input-output devices, and programming languages. Programming languages in the sense, in the past, we said that when the computer was developed at that time, we are using some languages, right? The languages are concerned to the particular fields at that time. But today we are using the general purpose languages. Now, note about them. Starting with computer development, initially computers were used by only the electronic peoples. Right? Initial stage used by the only electronic peoples. Adhe thara programming alli kuda ಅವತ್ತಿನ ಡೇಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಂತ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಿಂಗ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಕನ್ಸರ್ನ್ ಟು ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್. ಕಾಮರ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಕಾಮರ್ಸ್ ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ ಗೆ ಈ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಬರೆದ್ರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಾನು ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. ಸೈಂಟಿಫಿಕ್, ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಸೈಂಟಿಫಿಕ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್, ಯು ಯೂಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ. ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಕಾಮರ್ಸ್ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಬಂದಾಗ ಕೋಬೋಲ್ ಅಂತ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. COBOL, COBOL. It means common business oriented language. That language is exclusively meant for only commercial purpose. Using that language you can develop the, or you can solve the problems related to a commerce field. Like that, to solve the scientific problems, we are using one more language called as Fortran. For TRAN, formula translator. It is formula translator. That using that language, we are capable of solving only scientific problems. ಈ ತರ ಎಲ್ಲಿತ್ತು ಇನಿಷಿಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್. ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಇವತ್ತು ಏನಾಗಿದೆ, ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹಾರ್ಡ್ವೇರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್, ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್, ಎಲ್ಲ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಾನೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಲೈಕ್ ಹಾರ್ಡ್ವೇರ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ವಿ ನೋ ದಟ್ ಬೋತ್ ಆರ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಡ್. ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಎರಡು ಬೇಕು ನಮಗೆ, ಹಾರ್ಡ್ವೇರ್ ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ, ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಎರಡು ಸೇರಿದಾಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾರ್ಡ್ವೇರ್ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ವೇರ್ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ರೈಟ್, ಜನರೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಚೇಂಜಿಂಗ್. So based on this, the generations of computers are classified into 5 types. This type ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ, 5 ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಡಿವೈಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಸ್. There are 5 generations of computers. So we'll see now one by one. ನೋಡಿ, ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್. First generation. The first generations were developed between 1946 to 1956. 1946 to 1956. In the year 1946, we know that ENIAC was developed. That is why we are saying that that is our first electronic computer. So from that day, that year onwards, we have started the computer generations. That is, the first generation was done between 1946 to 1956. And these computers were built with one of the main components called as vacuum tubes. The first generation computers were built with the important device or component of that computer called as vacuum tubes. Then second point, these consist of around 18,000 vacuum tubes. How many vacuum tubes are used to develop one computer? To manufacture one computer, we need around 18,000 vacuum tubes are used. This is one component we are discussing. Right? One of the major component used in that computer is vacuum tubes. How many components are required? It's just like a small zero bulb. Vacuum tube is nothing but a small zero bulb it is. Right? Such bulbs, around 18,000 vacuum tubes are required. Then next point, 70,000 resistors are used. 70,000 resistors are used. Again, the resistors are electronic components. Then next point, 5 million soldered joints are used. 5 million solderings were done to manufacture one computer. 5 million solder joints were done. Then size is very large. You might have imagined that. Imagine ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರಬಹುದು. Now ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋ value is minimum 18,000. In some reference we get around 18,000 to 16,000 vacuum tubes were used to manufacture first generation computers. To connect them into the device, we need solderings. That's why I'm saying that around 5 million solder joints were used. That's why the size of this computer, first generation computers, are very huge. ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಜಾಗ ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ಇಡಕ್ಕೆ. Then one more important, that is how much power is consumed by this first generation computers. The first generation computer consumes around 160,000 watts of power. ಎಷ್ಟು? 160,000 watts power ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಈ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆದಾಗ that city light becomes dim. And the speed of this computer was in milliseconds, that is 10 to the power minus 3 seconds. The speed of this computer is milliseconds, that is 10 to the power -3. ನೋಡಿ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ. 18ರಿಂದ 60,000 ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಯೂಮ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, 70,000 ರೆಜಿಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಇದಾವ, 5 million ಜಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದಾವ ಸೋಲ್ಡರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು, ದೆನ್ ಸೈಜ್ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡದಿದೆ. ಇಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಕೂಡ ಹೌ ಮಚ್ ಪವರ್ ಇಸ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಡ್ ಅಂದಾಗ ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನಾಟ್ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ದಟ್ ನವಡೇಸ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಅರೌಂಡ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ 230 ವ್ಯಾಟ್ಸ್. ಒಂದು ಮನೆ ನಡೀತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ 1 ಮೀಟರ್ ಇಂದ 230 ವ್ಯಾಟ್ಸ್ ರೇಟ್ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು. ರೈಟ್ 1 ಕಿಲೋವ್ಯಾಟ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ, ರೈಟ್ ಅದನ್ನು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇವತ್ತು ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅಷ್ಟು, ಬಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು 160 kilowatts of power is required to start this computer. Then good. Next, the next thing is concerned with this is the features. Exam point of view also these features are important. The important features of first generation computers are ಏನೇನ್ features ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ರದು ಅಂತ. The important features are the first one, vacuum tubes for internal operations. Internal operation ಗಾಗಿ ನಾವು vacuum tubes ನ ಬಳಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. To perform internal operation, the vacuum tubes were well used. It is an electronic component. ಎಷ್ಟು ಬಳಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ? 1, 2 ಅಲ್ಲ, in thousands, in some thousands, right? The minimum 1,000 is minimum 18,000 vacuum tubes were used. Just imagine that. ಇದು ಒಂದು ಕಾಂಪೋನೆಂಟ್ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ನಾವು. 18,000 ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಯೂಮ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ಸ್ ಬಳಸಿದ ಒಂದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬೇರೆ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಾನಿಕ್ ಕಾಂಪೋನೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದಾವ, ರೆಸಿಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್, ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದಾವ, ರೈಟಾ? ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ಕೂಡಿದಾಗ if you are providing around 160 kilowatts of power supply to the device, ಅವಾಗ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಕಾಂಪೋನೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಹೀಟ್ ಜನರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ ಪವರ್ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಕೊಟ್ಟಾಗ ಕಾಂಪೋನೆಂಟ್ ಹೀಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ನಾವು ಲೈಟ್ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆಫ್ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ನಾವು ಬಲ್ಬ್ ಮುಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ಕೂಲ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದೇ ಬಲ್ಬ್ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬಿಟ್ಟ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ಬಲ್ಬ್ ಮುಟ್ಟಕ್ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಕೈ ಸುಟ್ಟುಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಹೀಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾ? ಮೊದಲು ಯಾಕೆ ತಣ್ಣಗೆ ಇತ್ತು? ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪವರ್ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ತಣ್ಣಗೆ ಇತ್ತು. ಪವರ್ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಟೈಮ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಮುಟ್ಟಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಹೀಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ರೈಟ್? ಅದೇ ತರ ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಯೂಮ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ಸ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮಿಂಗ್ ಪವರ್ ಸಪ್ಲೈ. ರೈಟ್? ಒಂದೆರಡು ಇಲ್ಲ, 18,000 to 60,000 ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಯೂಮ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ಸ್, ಇದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ರೆಸಿಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್, ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೀಟ್ ಜನರೇಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ರೈಟ್? ಓವರ್ ಹೀಟ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ವಿ ಲೂಸ್ ದ ಕಾಂಪೋನೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಟು ಅವಾಯ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ ಓವರ್ ಹೀಟ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು? ಮೇಂಟೆನೆನ್ಸ್ ವಾಸ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಡ್. ನಾವು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ಮೇಲೆ ಆ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ನ ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೂಲಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಹೋಗಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. to go for cooling process because they are getting hot. ಅಂದ್ರೆ heat problem ಇತ್ತು. This is a disadvantage. Next feature, punching cards were used for input and output operations. So if you remember, in the 1802, a person called as Jack Ward has shown us automatic weaving loom concept by using punching cards. So ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕ್ ಅನ್ನು ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಳಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಆಪರೇಷನ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ? ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ by using punching cards we are performing input output operations. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ತರ ಕೀಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಮೌಸ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. We are using punching cards, the paper sheet, art paper sheet. On that you have to go for punching. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು, ಲೆಟರ್ಸ್ ನಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ. ರೈಟ್? ಒಂದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ನಂಬರ್ ಆಫ್ ಶೀಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಡ್, cards are required. You can keep it in an order and start providing input for the computers. ಅಂದ್ರೆ input output operation ನಾವು ಬಳಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಏನೋ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ punched cards was used for input output operations. The next feature, low level languages for programming were used. low-level languages for programming were used. Low-level now. Low-level language for programming andre. So, how do we know that? Computer understands. Previous class we mentioned computer understands only binary numbers, only two numbers. That is 0 and 1. Computer understands only 0 and 1. By using that zeros and ones, computer writes its codes. So our language is now low-level language ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾರೆ ಅಥವಾ machine language. Computer language ಯಾವುದು? Machine language or low-level language ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ that uses only the binary digits, that is 0 and 1. By using 0 and 1, we have to write the programs in the first generation computers. It is not easy task to write the program by using low-level language. That is combination of zeros and ones. If you want to write a just start anta baribekagiru kuda English alli START anta baribodu, but adanne low-level language alli baridi andre around 12 to 14 digit number. In a sequence, number of zeros and ones combination that you have to remember it. You know, kastapattu, if you remember that, then stop maduvandaga again you have to remember one more like that number. Only sequence of zeros and one changes. So, ee tara navu ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು? Writing was required maximum. So, you have to remember many things to write a program for computers. It's a hectic process. If you get an error of writing, then removing an error again a horrible one. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಯಾವುದು 1 ಎಕಡೆ ಬರಬೇಕು, ಯಾವುದು 0 ಎಕಡೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು ತಿಳಿಯಲ್ಲ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ low level language programming is difficult, but at that time there is no alternate. They have used low level language for programming. ಬೇರೆ ಹಾದಿ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅವಾಗ. Then next, processing speed was very slow. Even in case of ENAC, they stated that ENAC can perform around 5,000 addition operations per second. Already illu irata ಇದೆ first generation computer kuda the speed of computer was around 10 to the power minus 3 per second. There are 1 second alli thousands of operations can be done anta ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದು ಕೂಡ if you compare this value to the present speed of the computer, we can say that the processing speed is slow anta ಇದೆ. Our time it is fast. 10 to the power minus 3 speed per second was very fast at that time, but that we are comparing the present day speed, it is very slow. Processing speed was very slow. ಯಾವಾಗ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಕಂಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ಬಟ್ ಅವತ್ತಿನ ಡೇನಲ್ಲಿ that was fast. The next feature, that is the computer size was large. ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ ನಾವು ಮೇಲೆ 18,000 vacuums ಬೇಕು. You have to connect them with the help of wires. You have to join it by soldering them. Then 70,000 resistors were there. Again you have to go for connecting that by using solder joints, right? It's an open circuit system. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, the size to keep the computer, the space required was very large, because computer size is very large. Space required is huge space is required to keep the first generation computers. Roughly around 20 by 30 square meters. Okay, 33 by 20 square meters space is required to keep our first generation computers. Ella kade andre, even if you observe the diagrams of that, example ENAC and all, even they are using ladders to give the connections for the computers. Andre wall tara 4 walls agide nam room alli irtara, ಆ ತರ full wall time ಎಲ್ಲ ಓಪನ್ ಸರ್ಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಇರ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. In the middle you have to sit and work. Correct? Then this is the newly developed device. That's why it was very expensive. This was very expensive. These are all the important features of first generation computers. Then example of this is ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer or Calculator. Then next one is UNIVAC 1, Universal Automatic Computer. The next one EDVAC, Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer, etc. These are the examples of first generation computers that we have studied in history of computers in the previous class. Right? This is all about the first generation of computers. Then next we move on to the second generation of computers. The second generations of computers were developed between 1957 to 1964 and were built with a device called as transistors. It means we have changed that component here. In the first generation, we were using vacuum tubes, that we are replacing with a component called as transistor. Transistors are replaced. The vacuum tubes are replaced by transistors. The second generation computers were smaller, faster, and more energy efficient than their predecessors. The speed was in milliseconds, that is 10 to the power minus 6 seconds. So it means we have started comparing now with the first generation. The first generation was 1946 to 1956, and the second generation is starting with 1957 to 1964, and these computers were built with a component called as device called as transistors. We are replacing vacuum tubes by transistors. Due to this, the size of the computer becomes small and the processing speed is improved and power required is less comparing to first generation computers. Even the processing speed of the computer is improved, doubled. That is, it was 10 to the power minus 3 per second. Now the second generation computer were 10 to the power minus 6 per second. Improved device ಸಿಗ್ತದೆ. Then we'll go with the important features of second generation computers. The important features of second generation computers are: the first one, transistors were used for internal operations. Transistors were used for internal operations. Then second, magnetic disks were used for secondary memories. Illinda enaaytu secondary storage devices were started. Magnetic storage devices are used as a secondary storage device in the second generations. And even for programming, we have developed one more language called as high-level language, were used for developing programs. First generationally, only low-level language matra available to, and then use we have written a programs for that. But in that generation, the software developers have developed one more language called as high-level language at the end of first generation. That's why in the second generation, we have started using high-level languages for developing the programs. And the most important feature is the last one, that is the second generation computers were faster, cheaper and smaller in overall size. Directly we are comparing first generation computers. This is faster than first generation, cheaper than first generation computers and smaller in size. And the examples of second generation computers were IBM 1401. Here IBM stands for International Business Machines. This is one of the oldest brand in manufacturing the computers. Initially it was IBM C, when in the history of computers, the first generation of computers was developed by IBM C only. It means International Business Machines Corporation it was in the beginning, but now it is presently only IBM, that is International Business Machines. And that the series 1401, then CDC 1604, then Honeywell 400. These are the examples of second generation computers. It means in the today's class, we have started with the last part of evolution of computers. We have completed ENIVAC, then EDVAC and UNIVAC, Universal Automatic Computer. That three devices we have completed today. Then at the completion of that, we have started with the next heading called as the generations of computers. The generations of computers directly depends on the technology and the architectural development, the development of architecture of the computers, and even the programming techniques. That programming techniques are problem solving methods, input output devices, everything was changing day by day. Right? Due to that, the computer generations are changing. In this, the computers are broadly classified into 5 generations. And that we have completed in the today's class, first generation and second generations. So concerned to today's class, if you find any doubts, just put that in the forums so that I can answer for that. Right? And in the next class, we will continue with third generation, fourth generation, fifth generations of computers. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.